Because I work for the government, I don't have a slick presentation, so please bear with me. As others have done before me, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land we are meeting on today, the Whadjuk Noongar people, and pay my respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. I also want to thank Bill, Dominic, the entire PayDirt team for inviting me. This is the first chance I've had to get out to Western Australia. I've only been in Australia since September, so it's really great to get a sense for the breadth of the critical minerals industry, but also just the breadth of Australia, flying from Canberra to here. You really get a sense of just the scope of the country. So what I would like to do today is to discuss what the United States is doing to combat climate change and develop the diversified, secure, and resilient supply chains for the technologies needed to combat climate change, from the final manufactured goods all the way upstream to the minerals that are extracted from the ground in places like Australia. As a global community, we acknowledge climate change as one of the greatest economic, social, and security threats the world faces. Fortunately, we have solutions to keep global temperature rise below our goal of 1.5 degrees Celsius. Most of the known solutions to reduce emissions, decarbonize, and tackle the climate change challenge rely on responsibly sourced critical minerals and diverse, secure, and resilient supply chains. The United States is a global leader in investing in technologies that will enable the world's transition to a sustainable future. In just the past year and a half, the US Congress has passed 3 of the most significant pieces of legislation in our history of combating climate change, and arguably one of the most significant pieces of legislation in the world. And what I'm talking about, obviously, is the Inflation Reduction Act, or the IRA or IRA, whatever you want to call it. Also, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, what used to be called the Build Back Better Act, and the CHIPS and Science Act. So together, these 3 pieces of legislation will total more than $1.5 trillion of investment into research and development and the adoption of clean energy and clean vehicles, as well as investments into infrastructure and supply chain security over the next decade and beyond. At the same time that the US government is trying to catalyze investment in these areas, we would be the first to admit that government is not the heavy lifter in solving our climate problem. Even the substantial funding from the United States government, the European Union, Australia, Japan, and others will not meet our collective climate goals. Our energy transition will not happen without the capital, innovation, skills, and hard work of the private sector, including those of you in the room today. Government policy and tax incentives found in laws such as the Inflation Reduction Act can help create an environment where private enterprise can flourish and create the solutions demanded by consumers around the world. But the hard work must be done by all of us. President Biden set ambitious goals for the United States to reach net zero by 2050, just like Australia and many of our global partners. And the US is also committed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 50% by 2030. Goals and national ambitions on paper help unify our efforts, but they do not accomplish anything if not backed up by action by governments, businesses, and consumers. Government policy is essential to create an environment where private enterprise can do what it does best, provide solutions for consumers. Government support can come through improved infrastructure, education of a skilled workforce, and consistent, fair, and robust regulation to create a level playing field that respects the environment and the communities where we live and work. As an example, prior to passing the Inflation Reduction Act, the United States passed the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, which made record investments in infrastructure, from new technologies such as electric vehicle charging stations and increase connectivity and cybersecurity to traditional infrastructure such as the water, electricity, railroads, ports, roads, and bridges essential for industry to succeed. Many of the tax incentives in the Inflation Reduction Act are tied to companies making investments in apprenticeship programs and ensuring workers make a fair wage to develop a skilled workforce in green industries well into the future. Although the US government, through the Department of the Treasury, is still finalizing the implementation regulations for the Inflation Reduction Act, what we do know shows it will be a game changer in combating climate change. The greatest impact of the Inflation Reduction Act is that it increases the competitiveness of clean energy technologies. Most discussion in the press has been about the Clean Vehicle Tax Credit, which will incentivize the purchase of clean vehicles, such as electric vehicles, through tax credits for consumers. These incentives will not only drive demand for electric vehicles, but are focused on vehicles under a certain price point to entice automakers to introduce electric vehicles within financial reach to a much larger segment of the market. The development of lower cost EVs will benefit not just Americans, but consumers globally. Congress included several provisions as part of the Clean Vehicle Tax Credit to secure supply chains for battery technologies and greatly increase the diversity of supply options for American and international automakers. The Act also provides tax incentives for used vehicles and commercial vehicles, including fleet and consumer leased vehicles with less stringent qualification requirements. And this is especially important because a lot of people are a little hesitant to adopt a new technology. So by making these tax credits available to fleet vehicles, hopefully people will lease vehicles more, electric vehicles more, and also it will drive investment in industrial vehicles. While most of what is reported about the Inflation Reduction Act has focused on the Clean Vehicle Tax Credit, and these credits will be monumental in decreasing emissions from motor vehicles, I'd like to point out that the Clean Vehicle Tax Credits are only 5% of the IRA, and the Inflation Reduction Act will drive investment throughout the clean energy sector, from more efficient household appliances to green hydrogen, by making cleaner technologies more cost competitive through temporary tax incentives. The IRA will hopefully drive consumer demand that will attract private capital and innovation to achieve the economy of scales where clean energy solutions outcompete the fuels and technologies that have accelerated climate change. Many consumers want more sustainable and environmentally responsible technologies in all aspects of their lives, and we are closer than ever to making those available. I know many of you in this room have been trying to increase investments in the energy transition. Business leaders around the world are increasingly seeing the market potential of green technology. A few weeks ago at the AFR Business Summit, I listened to the Bank of America CEO tell the crowd that his bank alone was committed to investing $1 trillion over the next decade to finance clean energy technologies. So the commitment of private banks, businesses, and investors is needed to complement the investments made by the United States and other governments towards accelerating clean tech adoption. There's been a lot of discussion since the IRA has passed about what it means for Australia. I would say that the solar panels, wind turbines, energy-efficient appliances, electric vehicles, and other clean technologies that will power our future rely on the nickel, cobalt, lithium, rare earths, and other critical minerals found throughout Australia. Just as important as having the resources is extracting and processing them in a responsible manner. Australia's commitment to high ESG standards has already attracted interest from American and other global manufacturers. Australian companies have benefited from recent US legislation, whether through Department of Energy funding for developing US operations or increased demand and offtake agreements from auto manufacturers looking to responsibly secure the supply chains for electric vehicles. No matter what forecast you look at, global efforts to combat climate change, such as the IRA, and consumers' increasing demand for sustainable and ethical supply chains will dramatically increase the demand for battery minerals, rare earths, and other critical minerals needed to combat climate change and reduce emissions. As a trusted free trade agreement partner with a robust mining industry run by a highly skilled workforce, supported by the community, Australia is in a unique position to be a supplier of choice for US and global manufacturers. These strengths go beyond mineral extraction and position Australia to move further down the value chain to extract more value domestically by processing the minerals essential to clean tech into the components that are essential building blocks of our clean energy future. The United States cannot develop, source, and manufacture all the technology to meet global climate goals. Neither can Australia, Europe, Japan, China, or any other one country. This is why President Biden has said categorically that the United States welcomes our international partners to join us with their own investments and policies into promoting green technology and secure and robust supply chains. Climate change has no international borders, and neither do the solutions to combating it. Commitments from like-minded countries dedicated to environmentally and socially responsible development of clean energy technology that spurs private investment and makes this technology more readily available to everyday consumers around the globe is a big win for all of us. Your decisions and efforts today and tomorrow will help position Australia to be a clean technology supplier of choice well into the future. Thank you very much.